Good morning, everybody. It's Mrs. Kardos here this morning, and today we're going to work on some multiplying and dividing of integers. So grab your paper, your pencil, your notes if you have them, and let's go ahead and get started. So our learning target for today is that we will be able to multiply and divide integers, and we're going to demonstrate that by completing some practice problems. So when we start with multiplying integers, just like we did with adding and subtracting, let's start with the number line. So the way I can think of my groups on my number line, I can think of them like hops, okay? And how many hops I'm going in each direction. So in this particular problem, we have three groups of two positives. So we can see that each one of my hops is plus 2 in the positive direction, and I wind up on 6, positive 6. So if I have 3 hops of 2 in the positive direction, I'm going to wind up on positive 6. Or I could think of it like I have my positive counters, the yellow ones. If I have 3 groups, and in each group I have 2 little positive smiley faces there, I wind up with positive 6 positives. The same can be said if we're going in the negative direction. If I have 3 groups of 2 negatives, or I have 3 hops, 2 at a time in the negative direction. So negative 2, negative 2, and negative 2, I'm going to wind up on negative 6. And the same can be said with the counters, the red ones. Love those little frowny faces there. 3 groups of 2 negatives, I'm going to wind up with negative 6. So we can think of multiplication as the same thing as repeated addition. Hopefully you learned this in elementary school, but if you didn't, let's just kind of go over it one more time. So multiplication is the same thing as repeated addition. So 3 times 4, in this case, these parentheses mean multiply. And I know that these parentheses mean multiply because there's nothing in between the 3 and the parenthesis. So I know I'm multiplying 3 times 4. So what I'm saying is I have 3 groups of 4 positives. So 3 times 4 is 4 plus 4 plus 4, which would be positive 12. And the same thing with my negative. If I have 3 groups with 4 negatives, I would have negative 12. So notice what's different in this one. The 3 is negative in this one instead of the 4. So we can think of this as saying that this is the opposite of 3 groups of positive 4, which would be 3 groups of negative 4. Because positive 4 and negative 4 are opposites, right? So because the 3 is negative, we're going to do the opposite this time. So I would have negative 4 plus negative 4 plus negative 4, which would be negative 12. And in this problem, notice they're both negative this time. But the idea is the same. We're going to have the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4, which would be 3 groups of positive 4. So 4 plus 4 plus 4, which would be 12. Now, it starts to get a little bit confusing with when we have the first one negative, the 3 negative. But if you'll just think of it like we're doing the opposite, if you'll just read that very first negative here as we're going to do the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4, which would be 3 groups of positive 4. Now, it's not always convenient to draw number lines and smiley faces and frowny faces as we've discussed before, so it is helpful to have rules, especially when we have larger values that we're dealing with. It just helps our math fluency. It helps us get things done quicker to have rules. So now that we've talked about why the rules work, let's just talk about what the rules are. Rule number 1 is that if the signs are the same, sorry about that. If the signs are the same, then my answer is going to be positive. So 2 times 5, they're both positive. My answer is positive 10. And in the bottom, negative 2 times negative 5 would also be positive 10. Sometimes in math, you'll hear teachers say that two negatives make a positive. Remember, we're mostly talking about that when we do multiplication and division. So rule number 2, if the signs are different, then my answer is going to be negative. So negative 2 times 5 would be negative 10, and 2 times negative 5, this time the 5 is negative, it would be negative 10. So if I have the same sign, my answer is positive, and if I have one of each, my answer is going to be negative. Take a minute, maybe pause the video, see if you can work these problems, and then come back and we'll discuss the answers. Okay, well, hopefully you jotted down some answers, and let's go over what they would be. So question A says 4 times 7, which is 28. So actually all of these are going to be 28, and we just have to decide if it's going to be a positive 28 or a negative 28. So in letter A, my signs are the same. They're both positive, so it's a positive 28. In letter B, I have one of each, one negative, one positive, so that's negative 28. In letter C, my signs are the same. They're both negative. So even though it seems counterintuitive, it is actually going to be a positive 28. And then in the last one, I have one of each, so it will be negative 28. So if the signs are the same, your answer is positive. If your signs are different, your answer is negative. The same applies, the same rules apply, the same two rules when we're doing division. So if the signs are the same, our answer is going to be positive. So in this first one, they're both positive, so my answer is positive. 27 divided by 3 would be 9. And in the second one, they're both a negative, so my answer is also positive 9. Because in this situation, those two negatives make a positive. And rule number 2, if my signs are different, meaning I have one of each, one positive and one negative, then my answer is going to be negative. So both of these would equal negative 9 because I have one of each. Pause the video for a moment, see if you can use those two rules to come up with answers, and then come back to the video to check your work. All right, let's see how you did. The first one they're both positive, so my answer is going to be positive 3. The second one, I have one of each, so negative 3. And the same thing on the third one, except this time the 6 is negative. But it doesn't matter, as long as I have one of each, my answer is negative. And in the last one, I have two negatives, so in this situation, that's going to make a positive. So we were able to complete our learning target today. We've learned the rules for multiplying and dividing integers, and we did do some practice problems. Remember, if you need to, watch the video again. Sometimes we have to see things and hear things more than once. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.